The word flexible has multiple meanings. Flexible can mean being able to change easily to meet the needs of the situation. For example, adapting smoothly to changes in your work schedule or the weather. Flexible can also mean being able to bend easily without breaking, like a gymnast or the bumper of your car. Some things can be both. In this episode of Tech Chat, we will learn about a series of connectors for physically flexible electronic cables that provide you with flexible options to meet many different application requirements. Welcome to Tech Chat, sponsored by Mouser Electronics, where we chat with engineering experts about the latest technical innovations that are shaping and reshaping our world. Today, we welcome Dave Gallagher, a product management director at Hirose Electric. Welcome to Tech Chat, Dave.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good to be here with you today. What's going to be our topic of discussion?
We're going to be talking about the Hirose OneAction series Flex or FFC connectivity products.
Sounds good. Well, let's dive right in.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So flat flex cables, or FFC, has been around for decades. However, that type of connectivity for this technology actually didn't come along until nearly a decade after the cable. Shocking, I know this might be, but it's left a gap in many of the knowledge base. And this is what's great about this Tech Chat opportunity to go over some of the changes in the industry. It started with lift connectors, or low insertion force, and eventually moved to ZIF-style connectors, or zero insertion force. Early ZIFs used a slide-in tray to hold them in place. They were prone to alignment issues, and users struggled to get consistent quality connections. Actuators actually promised to solve this problem by adding a distinct latching mechanism to the design. And Hirose was actually the originator of the mechanical actuator. However, some actuators, not Hirose's, can be delicate and break easily. The negative experiences have influenced design engineers for quite a few years, and they have concerns about actuator-style connectors. In the past few years, Hirose released a new style of FFC connector, and we like to call it our OneAction series. These products are a perfect candidate for upselling today's connectors, maybe the older designs, and solving these issues related to the insertion and the alignment.
Yeah, I've got some experience in this before I came over to EE-Tech, where I was working with these kind of cables and connectors, and that alignment issue was always a struggle of getting that, especially we were doing manual insertion, really difficult.
Yeah, manual insertion is the typical method done by hand, and users certainly, they have to deal with those issues. And whenever they have a misalignment, that certainly, if you don't find it right at the beginning, you get down to the final production stage, you're going through final tests, and boom, there's a misconnection someplace in the line. You got to go find it. It looks good, but it may not actually be good in the end product.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, your last bullet here mentions a wiping contact structure. Is that something unique to this series, or is that common in these kind of connectors?
With ZIF-style connectors, the idea here is that the flex slides into it, but a wiping contact with a traditional ZIF, when the actuator is open, the flex doesn't necessarily touch the contact completely as it goes in. With the OneAction series, it actually wipes across it. So it is a benefit of this design. I don't want to say it's unique to it, but it is a benefit distinctly within this family that allows it to wipe any debris off that contact, so you don't have a single, say, dust particle. Remember, these things get really small. We're talking 0.25 pitch or even smaller in many cases. A little dust particle can prevent that electrical connectivity.
And you mentioned also that these are relatively new and there's a kind of lot of development happening in the last decade. What are some common misconceptions about the cables and the connectors that maybe people haven't migrated over to using them because they have misconceptions that really aren't an issue anymore?
Oh, that's a great question. So with the ZIF connectors in general, there's a lot of confusion about the ZIF cables themselves, right? What they can handle, whether or not they handle high-speed data. Folks originally thought of them more as a substitute or replacement for like ribbon cable from many years ago. But today, these cables are carrying high-speed data. We're talking DisplayPort video signals, USB performance, MIPI video, and other types of signals. PCIe is another potential data transmission technology that you're seeing in flex cables. So flex is used in more and more areas. They're not delicate. These things are flexible. That's the whole idea behind flat flex cable, FFC, or flexible printed circuits, FPC. And they are very durable, very rugged. And with the new designs in the market today, Hirose has developed side latch tabs that improve retention force. The actuators have gotten stronger. The overall connectors are very durable in the market. And we even have automotive capability on several of these products, including ones on this screen.
Well, excellent. Well, why don't you tell us some more about this OneAction Flex series?
Sure. Let me go ahead and show you a quick little video here that talks a little bit about the capabilities of it, showing how it actually slides in. You can see the OneAction feature. Notice that the user did not have to open that actuator up to make this latch in place. It is secure just through insertion. This can even be done by robotic systems in an automated production line. For removal of that connector, they just have to lift the actuator up and it comes right out. And you can see that picture shortly here. As the finger comes in, it lifts it up and it slides out and releases that connector. This makes that whole assembly process very simple. The user is not dealing with that actuator during the assembly process. The product ships with it closed in that closed position. So it is ready to go as soon as it's placed on the board. The flex slides right in, and you can even see from this angle here, there are tapers, and we'll talk a little bit more about those tapers in a future slide here.
Oh, that would have made my life a lot easier some years ago.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big areas that we've seen changes in the market is machine vision inspection. We all know that automated manufacturing is the big thing. We talk about technology reaching into the manufacturing floor, whether we're talking robotic systems that are doing assembly, we're talking just in general, machines doing a lot more of that work. But there's also the aspect of inspection. Traditional inspection waited to very far down the line before we determined whether something was working or not working. These days, that's not the case. Machine vision inspection is used throughout the production line. You see cameras everywhere on the production lines. They look at the connectors, they look at the cables, they look at the placement of components on the board, making sure that everything is in the right place as it goes down the production line, identifying potential faults in the product long before it gets into the end use. Hirose's actually designed in aspects of our connector that are good for that machine vision process. So you can see here in the picture a little window that was placed through the connector. Machine vision camera looks through the window and can identify very rapidly that the flex is properly inserted. If there was a misalignment, then that would be seen through that window and they'd understand it. And you can also still see the shoulder of the flex on the outside of the connector. So there's 2 points of visual reference for this connector to make sure it's fully inserted. Machine vision inspection is big. Customers are constantly asking, how can we use machine vision inspection to determine our connectors are properly terminated?
Oh, yeah. What a great addition to the capabilities for, again, on my previous experience, that you'd have to get to electrical testing before you could determine if it was inserted properly. And if it wasn't, it was just trial and error of that whole process to get it right. And those old style ones just were difficult to work with.
Yeah. Machine vision takes the guesswork right out of it. It's now a very positive yes or no answer. You know exactly where the problem is. So where, as you mentioned, the electrical test that you'd perform later on, now you had to then go through another troubleshooting process to identify which electrical connection was the failure point. Here we can just look at it. The machine says, hey, this component, poor insertion, error. We got to stop here. We got to fix it. And we know that problem well in advance, exactly where the issue is, eliminates that guesswork and improves that throughput rating on the manufacturing process. That saves money for everybody.
Oh, 100%.
Shielded products are a big thing these days. We look around, today's products often have wireless connectivity. With the wireless, we got RF radio waves. Everything is shielded inside of many of the boxes. It's funny to look at the design. You open up the case and all you see nowadays is shield plates everywhere. Well, this can extend to the cables and the data cables that are connecting throughout the system. Shielded flex and shielded FFC is very common today, and there are different types of shielded FFC on the market, but not all of the folks out there understand that a shielded flex connector is built differently than a standard flex connector. We've actually added, at Hirose, we've added these additional contacts along the inside of the connector. Now, these contacts are not within the existing pin field on the connector. They are on another portion of the connector on the inside, which means it makes contact with the flex cable's outer ground plate shield without impacting your diff pair signals on the inside. Traditional method to deal with shielding was to put a via inside the end of the connector and drop that outer shield to a pin within that data field. That means you need more pins in the design of the connector in order to support the shield. So often they'd only reserve 1 or 2 pins within the internal portion of the connector. By having separate contact points throughout the inside of the connector to make that shield contact, your diff pair signals for your data stream totally independent from the outside cable shield. So that saves you space on the board, but also improves the quality of that shield. And you can see that noise reduction diagram on this slide here. You can see that significantly improves that signal.
Dave, now this seems like it would be important in both directions as far as shielding what's on the cable from outside interference. But those high speed signals you talked about, like USB 3.0 or DisplayPort, it's also going to help with those lowering the emissions of those, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you're talking about high-speed signals, the signal inside the cable could interfere with other devices and other cables and other components. We all know that the FCC requires, emissions to be low on RF transmitted signals coming out of boxes in many applications. When we look at shielding the cables, it's not just removing noise from outside, but it's preventing internal noise from getting out to other portions of the system, potentially affecting performance.
Exactly.
We talked already about the alignment of a flex and getting it properly inserted in. And another advantage within the scope of the OneAction family is Hirose is really focused on providing tapered guides on the connector, not just on the sides. And we can see it on the side of the connector here. But notice on the PC board surface area, we actually have a guide that's built into that portion of the connector to help the person or the operator that's installing the flex. They can place it down on the board and slide it into place, and it will ramp up into the proper position. This is all about speed in manufacturing, and this is one of the benefits. When you're dealing with really tiny connectors, the one in the picture here has a 0.25 pitch, and when you're dealing, if we have a really small flex cable, getting that proper alignment is a real challenge for the operator, and by providing those tapered guides, it just makes that process easier for everybody.
I think in addition to making that process easier and faster, I would assume that making sure you're buying really high quality components for these things because of the tight pitch, that if you got variation there, then you're just not going to have effective connections, even if you inserted it.
Yes, great point. And one of the things that we work with, Hirose certainly is aware of the challenges. When we're talking about flex, over the time frame that it's been out in the market, we see the pitch has gotten smaller. If you were asking maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we were talking 1 millimeter pitch. And then maybe 5 or 7 years ago, 0.5. Today, we're below 0.25 pitch on some flex connectors. In the OneAction series, we go down to 0.25 pitch. This is very small. And having the end profile to be matching the design and drawing information is very critical in these applications. Hirose provides models and information on our website that allows the end designer to build their flex cable assembly correctly to meet with the connector, and getting the proper dimensions absolutely is critical, getting that alignment in there. We hear about power-hungry electronics packed with more and more cool features, but this really means larger batteries, and larger batteries means more current to be handled, not only during the usage, but also during the charging phase. None of us like waiting around for our electronics to charge back up, so to charge faster, the designers must push the envelope, more current, tighter spaces. Well, tighter spaces is really what flex connectivity is all about, and we're talking about small, flexible connectors. Typically, we say pitch equals contact current, and that's just a general rule of thumb for the most part. So typically, you're going to see a 0.5 millimeter pitch connector can normally handle about 0.5 amps per pin. By using advanced materials and properly distributing that power throughout the connector, this picture here is of a 0.25 millimeter pitch connector that is handling up to 1 amp per pin in that design. So for those very high energy demanding applications, you can use flex to transmit that power from one point of your circuit design to another point. You just have to bear in mind that this design can get a little tricky, but our team is here to support those designers in the early stages of their projects to help them develop the right pin layout and pin selection for it.
Have you been seeing growth in this type of application with the expansion of USB power delivery standard?
Absolutely. It's funny, I didn't put that picture into this presentation, but one of my presentations I do pretty routinely shows a USB Type-C connector being connected back to the main board using flex cable. And we're talking higher current these days. And as you may be aware, the EU standard governing power delivery on USB, they're looking for a standard. They're looking to make sure that everybody's using the same connector. Now, all these applications, they need more current. And we're talking significant amount of current. And with a traditional connector, that connector has to grow in size in order to support that. Here we show you how you can still use a small connector and deliver that high current. Maybe it's not USB-C. It could be a flex-based battery. There are batteries that actually have flex cable, FPC, that makes the connection between the battery and the board instead of a traditional wire-to-board style connector. Users can benefit from using the same flex design for both our FH63S series and FH67 series. These are both 0.5 millimeter pitch products. One is a right angle design and the other is a vertical design. Tight spaces can be a real challenge. And when you're dealing with inserting a flex cable, the ability to insert it straight down into the board is the benefit of the FH67. But you may be routing to another PC board or someplace else in a device where a right angle connector is more suitable for the application. The other situation with tight spaces is these days, if you were to tear apart maybe a portable electronic device, some of our wearable products in the market today, they often have multiple PC boards, very small PC boards. And it's actually flex that makes all that connectivity work. It's almost like origami on the inside. Well, during the assembly process of those systems, they actually connect the flex first, and the boards are hanging by the flex cable, and then they do the final assembly. The one of the nice benefits of the OneAction series is you can wait on that flex insertion, do your PC board assembly, because remember, we don't need access to the actuator to insert the flex in there. So you can assemble those boards and then insert the flex. This means that the weight of the boards is not dangling by the end of the flex cable, which could potentially lead to misalignment or even separation of that flex or damage to that flex in the design. So you see the picture here of two PC boards right together and the flex connector tucked in between. That works perfectly for that assembly process.
Yeah, stacking PCBs before the flex insertion, that's a really cool feature for increasing that system density and reliability during assembly, as you noted. So Dave, we talked about the features and the benefits of these connectors. Can you tell me about some of the leading applications that you're seeing in the market?
Absolutely. So the applications are pretty wide for this. I mean, we're seeing portable devices, battery operated, whether we're talking about going into the doctor's office, instead of bringing your traditional instruments into the room, they bring a tablet, and tablet devices use flex, and they bring in electronics handheld. You might be sent home with something that you wear on your wrist that measures information. That wrist-worn device often uses flex in the internal device. Whether we're talking gaming systems, cell phones, cameras, any of these devices fall under the category of systems that we're definitely going to see flex connectivity. But it's not just these areas as well. We're starting to see robotic systems that are getting highly complex, computers and other data transmission, video camera systems, all embedded into these robotics devices. And those are additional extended applications where we're seeing flex connectivity show up. And, I mentioned at the very beginning, we have a couple of connectors that are in the automotive class of products. That it means you can use it in those rugged environments, similar to robotics, and not have to worry about that connectivity.
Yeah, so traditionally, I think we think of these applications as the really compact kind of commercial applications here, but there's really advantage, isn't there, for the reliability, having a cable with the connectors that can move with systems, deal with vibration perhaps better, and lightweight are important in other applications besides just consumer electronics.
Exactly. Yeah. It's you go into a factory and you see this big automated machine building complex stuff. And what is the operator doing? They're standing in front of the basically a tablet or a display screen, and maybe it might be a touch screen, and they're using it. And that's a big industrial machine using technology that was originally developed for the computer world or the tablet world. We're seeing that cross compatibility between one market and another. I had a customer actually tell me one day, I was talking, I said, where do you get your inspiration? And they were in a medical device industry. And they said, where do you get your inspiration is what I asked. And their response was, oh, we look to the consumer products industry for our next technology guide because users like what they're using today for cell phones and other devices. And we try to incorporate that into our end equipment. It was a surprise to me.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, but then it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Can you provide an overview? You mentioned that you have multiple products in this series. Can you provide an overview of the OneAction Flex series?
Absolutely. We have 5 different families of products. And I mentioned, talking about pitch size starting around 0.5 millimeter. We go down to 0.25 millimeter. There are different physical shapes and sizes within the scope, different pin counts within the family. I talked about automotive. That's our FH63S and FH67 families of products. Those can be used in infotainment type applications in rugged environments, maybe your robotics customers. They're using that very common 0.5 millimeter pitch design, both right angle and vertical. The FH72 drops down to 0.3 millimeter, and the FH62 and the 82 drops down to 0.25 millimeter. But one thing I want to point out with some of these smaller connectors, like the FH62, even though it's 0.25 millimeters, its mounting pitch, because it's 2 rows of contacts, its mounting pitch is actually 0.5. So you can actually use that processing cost savings of building a 0.5 millimeter pitch board, and you get that 0.25 millimeter pitch physical size of the connector. And the only thing that you really have to worry about is the Flex FPC going between the line being 0.25 millimeter pitch. And that was the series I used as a demonstration for the high current potential applications.
Oh, that's really interesting where you're getting more density without having to drive that additional cost into your printed circuit board and assembly methods.
Yes, as the pitch falls on the main PC board is processing, the cost rises to make. So we usually see in the industrial space 0.5 millimeter and sometimes processing down as low as 0.4, but usually the 0.25s of the world are really meant for the consumer electronics industry. But that FH62 with that dual roll design, that makes it very easy to mount that on a PC board that it was developed around the 0.5 millimeter pitch design.
Well, Dave, we're kind of getting near the end. Any last takeaways for the audience?
Really appreciate the opportunity today to speak with you and talk about these cool products. The last takeaway I'd point out is anytime you're working with flex connectivity designs, it's a great opportunity to really evaluate, if we're working with the right design and layout. There are so many choices available from Hirose today. The Hirose team can certainly help you out in identifying the right product for your application and assist with models, drawings, and other information. Make that job easy. Don't go it alone. Give us a call and we'll help you out.
Oh, that's great last advice. Yeah, it's nice to have people that are the experts on these things to come alongside and make sure you're making the right decisions and help you get to market faster.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Well, Dave, it was great having you here today. As we conclude today's Tech Chat, we want to thank our sponsor, Mouser Electronics. If you are looking to purchase any of these great Hirose electric products, please head over to Mouser.com to help them continue to support educational presentations like this. And join us again next time on Tech Chat, where we chat with the leading technical experts like Dave Gallagher from industry-leading innovators like Hirose Electric, who are changing our world every day.